Forgive us for having a groundhog on the screen. It's not Groundhog Day. I know it might feel that way with Max Verstappen having won his sixth race of the year already, but it is the Canadian Grand Prix. Welcome to the WTF1 Wrap. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Of course, we are brought to you by our friends at MoneyGram. We're powered by them. Thank you for joining us. I know it's a bit late over in the UK and what have you, but thank you for choosing to spend your post-race experience with us. And I've got a very special guest with me. F1 content creator, pundit, cut from the same cloth. It's one of these guys I've always wanted to do a show with, and I'm very, very glad we were able to get him. Aldas is here. Say hi, Aldas. Say hi, everybody. How's it going?
It's going very, very well. We were actually talking beforehand. Obviously, me and Dre have known each other for a while now. We're doing this F1 content stuff, but
Long time.
we've never actually done a video together. So this has definitely been a long time making. But yeah, looking forward to this. Always good to talk F1. It's a bit annoying that all these North American races are really late on, but that's just kind of the European kind of elitism. We're used to the races being at like,
Yeah.
2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So this is this is a little bit different, but always good.
Yeah, I am up far past my bedtime here on this occasion because we Europeans are spoilt as all hell when it comes to races. We played by US Eastern time this time round, so good for the locals, I suppose. Maybe not so good for us, but again, thank you for choosing to spend your night with us. I just wanted to mention real quick before we get properly going. We are powered, of course, by our friends at MoneyGram, and while the Canadian Grand Prix may be over, those of you living in the US still have time to enter the MoneyGram Fast Money giveaway. Because Nico Hulkenberg qualified on the front row. Yes, it was a P5 start technically, but who cares about red flag penalties after the fact? Because he qualified on the front row, MoneyGram is giving away $5,000 in potential prizes to you MoneyGram customers out there. Just download the MoneyGram app and sign up for MoneyGram's Haas F1 team updates to enter, and be sure to register every race weekend. The better MoneyGram Haas F1 does on the track, the more money is up for grabs. So yeah, there's $5,000 up there, and I believe as well, just for this weekend, Canada gets in on the action as well. So anyone in the US and Canada can have a crack at it this time around. So if you have got the MoneyGram app, give it a go. Sign up for their updates. There's $5,000 being given away across to a bunch of their customers. So check that out if you haven't already. Add time out of the way, but yeah, I mean, Aldas, what did you make of that Canadian Grand Prix? Because I actually thought that was quite a decent race, all things considered.
I think we always have to put it in obviously into perspective because barring reliability, barring some kind of freak occurrence, it was always going to be a Max win this season. He's at one with that car. So it was always going to be Max winning. But I mean, to be fair, I mean, with Lewis jumping Fernando at the start, we had a bit of kind of drama there. So that was quite good. I thought we had a pretty decent race. Luckily, it wasn't kind of the one-stop bore that we've had in quite a few races this season.
Yeah.
So we also had a bit of strategy, different drives or different tires, which is always great. So yeah, I thought it was I actually thought it was a really solid race for kind of a 2023 season that has been dominated by Red Bull. Obviously, Max, Red Bull, I think, going on to win their 100th Grand Prix. Max matching Ayrton Senna with 41. Yes, there are more races now, but that's always a massive landmark. So yeah, I thought overall with all the battles and even that intrigue right towards the end, Alex kind of hanging on, Lando with that 5-second penalty, still pulling off moves on the final corner.
Oh yeah.
I thought kind of, again, relatively speaking for 2023, I thought it was a really good race, actually.
Yeah, I ticked most boxes. I can't complain. I mean, yes, if you're going into this race following, every weekend as a fan, it's kind of a given that Max is going to win. Didn't completely run away. I think it was more of a cruise control win for Max than anything else. But like you said, seeing Hamilton and Alonso go to war is always a fun time. Great to see the two veterans of the game going at it. I mean, combined age of 79, nearly 600 Grand Prix between them, or something. I think it's something silly like that. That was fun. Like I said, Alex Albon, and we'll get to him later on, driver of the day, and forgive me for the Alex Albon hair impression, but he deserves it because that was a fantastic drive from him to get seventh in the Williams. Intrigue up and down through the field. There was some good fights in the field. I mean, a little bit DRS train heavy. Unfortunately, Haas went a little bit backwards in the end. Nick de Vries got a little bit testy again. We'll get to them in a minute, but overall, I think, like you say, given this is 2023, given that there is a dominant team up the front and there's no getting around that, that wasn't a bad Grand Prix at all. I think that, given expectations, I thought was about as good as you could properly hope for, unless you're getting like proper shenanigans. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. I think again, because Max he's not just winning, but he's dominant. I mean, if anything, this was kind of a weirdly like close race. I think he only won in the end by like 8 seconds or something,
Yeah, 8, 9 seconds,
compared to the 20 plus that he won in Barcelona. So the field was a little bit closer. There was a little bit intrigue with him in terms of it seemed like he was struggling on the tires a little bit midway through the race. But yeah, again, it's an act of God. It's weather or reliability. That's the only thing that is going to stop Max Verstappen at the moment. And you're seeing Checo. I mean, I think he started in 10th after some penalties, but he wasn't able to make the same progress that I still think Max would have made. I mean, I did a poll actually on Twitter before the race asking if Max started exactly where Checo started in P10, where would he be by the end of the race? And the majority was still P1. So it just shows the dominance that not just Red Bull have, but Max as well. But again, we still saw that battle between Mercedes and Aston Martin. That's super close. So, and I mean, listen, Hamilton Alonso is always box office. It's amazing to watch. There's always something going on, whether it's pit stop drama, whether it's on track overtakes, whether it's some mind games in between the two.
Absolutely,
so yeah, that was a lot of fun.
They're getting on remarkably well for two guys that have taken jabs at each other constantly throughout their careers. It's all a bit too nice at the moment for my liking, but overall, I mean, you're absolutely right. I do love seeing them go at it. It was great fun, especially given that. If you look back to Spain a little bit, Hamilton and Russell both getting on the podium for Mercedes, you think, hang on a minute, maybe that Mercs upgrade has got them back in front. But now Aston Martin, with their upgrade package, very Red Bull-like, they brought that to Canada. That's put them back in front again with Alonso beating Hamilton in a straight-up dogfight for second. So, yeah, very much intriguing. I mean, yes, it's not a title fight at the moment, but there is intrigue down the grid, and I think that Aston Martin-Mercedes fight is going to be fascinating to keep tabs on over the course of the season, certainly. Should we break out the tier list, Aldas?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's break out the tier list. Let me just fire this up here. Just a moment. 1 second. Just got to find the right tab first and foremost. Whoops. Technically, I'm getting there, but right here we
There
are.
was a lot of, to be fair, there was a lot of good and also a few howler performances as well. So this is going to be quite interesting in terms of judging the drivers because there was a whole, it was very varied up and down the grid and
definitely.
Yeah.
Right, I've got it up. There he is. There's the tier list. There's our drivers. Should we get a couple of the big ones out of the way first? I think we kind of have to put Max in S, right? Again, should we just get that one out of the way quick and not waste any time here? Because
exactly, not much to say about that one in terms of Max. Definitely S tier. I mean, I'm trying to pick holes just for the sake of like having a bit of an argument. Maybe not S tier, but apart from maybe a tiny bit of time management that he maybe struggled with, but maybe that was more on the car, I don't know. But yeah, he was pretty comfortable. Even towards the end, though, he was pushing. I mean, I think we have this kind of... I think a lot of people think that Max is just driving at 80% all the time. And whilst I'm sure, that is, the truth in a lot of the race, he was still pushing towards the end. I mean, that kind of S chicane before turn 10, I think, where George Russell binned it.
Yeah.
He did have a little moment on the curb and... Listen, if you hit that curb a little bit too much, that can send you easily into the wall. So with a few laps to go, it could have been difficult. But yeah, no, definitely Max S tier.
Yeah,
that's the tiniest bit I can pick out.
Yeah, fastest lap away from going back to back with a Grand Slam. That's not happened since 2013 with that happen. But he did lead every single lap, which means I think he's now at something like 225 consecutive laps led, going back to the end of Miami, which is just startling. No one else has led a Grand Prix in Formula One since Sergio Perez in Miami. That's how long this stretch of dominance has gone for Max. It is
scary.
It's absolutely outrageous how he's driving at the moment. I think it's also fair to say Alonso's also in S. I think that's, again, pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, I mean, he got jumped. Obviously, he got jumped off the line. It seemed like he had a decent kind of... The reaction time was fine, but then the kind of initial launch was not that great. Got jumped by Lewis, but then, he got the move done. He kind of kept it on track. And even with those kind of little bit late issues towards the end, managed them just right. Lewis did put a bit of pressure on him, but again, yeah, I can't really fault Fernando. Apart from getting jumped, I think he's still, absolute S tier as well. So,
yeah.
And also back on the podium as well. He was talking before the race how, that is it. I'm not going to, no podiums, but back on the podium for every single race. And, he's bagged that up so far. So, yeah, classic Fernando.
Yeah, 6 out of 8 so far this season for Fernando Alonso. And, yeah, like, he is driving as well as he has in years. This is an incredible... you could not ask for any more from what Fernando Alonso has given you so far this season. He's in a clear number 2 car. and he's been on the podium almost every weekend so far. The only times he didn't was Spain, where I don't think the car was just competitive enough for a podium at all, and Baku, he just missed out due to an inspired Leclerc, who you all know Leclerc is stupid good around Baku. So yeah, with that in mind, Alonso is driving very, very well. As I think is Lewis Hamilton, I want to say as well. Like
I was going to say really quickly, just to say one more thing about Fernando. Just 9 points behind Sergio Perez in the championship. That is crazy.
Yeah,
actually,
that's incredible. It's like that Vettel and Verstappen antagonist role from a few years ago, where the second guy in the dominant car might actually get beaten by the main antagonist in the second best car, because Alonso is just not. He's barely put a foot wrong all year. So that could very easily happen. We'll get to Checo in a minute. But I've also stuck Hamilton in S, and I think that's pretty fair. I mean, the chat was all screaming, man, Max in Max tier, but Benny Central fan says Hamilton S tier. Yeah, I can't disagree with you guys in the chat, saying Alonso, saying S tier as well. Hamilton, I think, deserves a spot in there. Again, right behind Alonso, chased him pretty much all the way home. I think Aston and Mercedes were quite evenly matched. So I think with that in mind, I think it's hard not to put Hamilton third in the end.
I think especially when, because Aston Martin, I think, also brought some upgrades to Canada as well. So I think they might be maybe have a 10th or 2 on Aston Martin. But Lewis did everything he could. I mean, no mistakes. Again, he jumped him at the start, so got a great start. There was that really good battle. And he never let Fernando get comfortable. He always kept him under pressure. So when he did have those kind of like brake cooling issues towards the end of the race, Fernando was still sweating. Yeah. And that's all down to Lewis kind of putting that pressure on there. And I mean, when I look at that S tier, those are the guys. Those are the guys that to me almost stand above the rest in terms of speed, consistency. I mean, Fernando and Lewis still doing it after all these years. It's of course, Max is kind of in his prime, but the fact that I still think Lewis and Fernando are also still in their prime, still capable of at least challenging for championships. And those guys are really they are kind of the league above. When I look at that S tier, it's just those 3 to me. And Lewis definitely had another really good race. P3, that's solid for Mercedes. Good qualifying as well.
Absolutely.
On a track where they said, to be fair, kind of a lot of slow speed corners, a lot of kind of chicanes, not kind of what suits their car, but he kind of brought it home, in P3, and I think that's a really good result for him as well.
I agree. Andrew Bannister in the chat says the 3 best drivers in F1 right now. I can't disagree with you at all. I think you're absolutely right, Andrew. I think they are the 3 best drivers in F1 right now. They are all getting the absolute maximum out of their equipment, and they are performing consistently week in and week out. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, Andrew. Also in the chat, Woody says Max has won 21 out of the last 30. That is terrifying when you mention it like that. Yeah, you're right. 15 out of the 22 last year, and now 6 out of 8 to start this year. 21 out of the last 30 races. That's a 70% win rate in the last 30 for a Max. That
crazy.
That is terrifying. Also, Mike Cabetta in the chat says, also was weird to see Hamilton saying he's happy to share the podium with 2 drivers and such a nice chill chat he'd had with Max in the cool down room. I mean, it was like delight, but it feels wrong. I've often nicknamed it the Max Verstappen post-race podcast when they're in the driver's room afterwards. It's like Max is here, Alonso's here almost every week, and then you get a guest on for the 3rd spot. It's mostly Hamilton.
I definitely agree with that, actually. To be fair, when Lewis said, it's great to be on the podium with these 2 champions, I think he said also, it's really good to finish 3rd as well. I was like, I actually don't expect that from Lewis. I think he's kind of a lot more circumspect in terms of that's just where the car is. He tried to push Fernando as much as he could, but it's strange seeing him happy to finish in P3. We're used to him, it's either the win or not, or the win or nothing usually. So that was also, I kind of get what he means actually, but what a podium. It's just incredible. Max, Fernando, Lewis, and also Adrian Newey as well. And that is, I tweeted it. I think that's like the greatest all-round podium we've ever seen in Formula One. Someone calculated, I think it's like 20 championships between the 4 of them. Crazy.
It's something silly like that, because I think Newey's won 9 or 10 as a car designer. I think Newey was up there because it was his 200th Grand Prix win as a car designer, which is just outrageous. The 200
Lewis
wins.
Has got to speed up. He's got to get more wins to catch up to Newey.
Someone get James Allison back up here. He's getting blown out in the power rankings here. I want to put one more man in the S tier, and I think it's the driver of the day voted by you, the fans, and I'm going to give that 4th spot to Alex Albon, because 7th place, that is an incredible result for Williams, and the man was flawless. Even going back to qualifying, he was the first man out on slicks as well. got into Q3, qualified well, strategically was perfect. It's obvious that Canada suits this car. With Williams don't tend to be very draggy. They've got a lot of top speed, in total. But despite all of that, who cares? Alex Albon finished 7th in a Williams. That's an incredible result.
I mean, the entire weekend was just, I thought, incredible by him because there was a lot of pressure actually coming into the weekend because Williams brought upgrades. I think they only had one set of upgrades. So he had the
Albon's
pressure of,
yeah,
making sure that he didn't bin it for one. And then, what he did in the wet to be the first, like you said, the first one on the slicks, quickest in Q2. That was good for, that was good to see, I'm sure, for everyone. And then the race, I mean, I think he did a one stop actually. I mean, the way he took those hard tires all the way to the end. Yeah, he pitted on lap 12 under that safety car, went all the way to the end of the race. So managed them perfectly. And I think he was quick. I mean, the Williams is, quick down the straights. It's a very slippery car. It doesn't have a lot of downforce. So I think Alex actually said off the race, this is one of those tracks where it was always going to suit the Williams a lot more, but he was quick in the right places, quick off that kind of turn 10 chicane going onto that back straight. So yeah, he absolutely held it off, and that's a lot of pressure. I mean, it's difficult for us as fans to kind of even like try to imagine what that is, but he's got this massive train. He's got Ocon pushing, he's got Bottas pushing, he's got Lando also,
Lando
pulling
all
off
over
moves,
him in the end. Yeah,
exactly. So that's a lot of pressure, and to come home in P7. What a result for the team. And I think a really big positive for them because, again, because of the upgrades, it's not just a good race, but it's going to give all of the people that, put it all together, work through the night to get those upgrades on the car. Again, just one set of upgrades. I think it's going to give them a massive boost. And yeah, I mean, flawless performance. Undoubtedly deserves to be S tier. And he was my driver of the day, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he was my vote as well, and that gets Williams off the bottom of the Constructors' Championship. That is a result, especially given, and Albon made this great point on Sky Sports F1 when he was being interviewed about it, where he said he doesn't want to say the top 8 spots are locked out, but he said that, well, with the top 4 teams so pretty much locked in with Red Bull, Aston, Mercedes, and Ferrari all there, likely in the top 8 spots, like, points are going to come at a premium this year for the back half of the table. McLaren, Alpine, Haas, AlphaTauri, they're going to be scrapping for maybe 1 or 2 points a weekend. So for Albon to get 6 is priceless for Williams this season, because they're not going to get very many chances all year to get a car home in 7th place. I mean, remember, he ran 7th when he spun out in Australia earlier this season. So he was this time he was able to convert it. So I'm delighted for Alex in that sense. And yeah, immaculate drive. A couple of guys I want to talk about here real quick. Would I be crazy to put both Ferraris in A? Because I think they were 4th and 5th on the day in the end. And I was worried about them from a strategic standpoint going into this one. The jokes about Ferrari's strategy team have been long and rich and plentiful, but I think given they stayed out on the mediums after the safety car and they made it work by turning it into a one-stopper, I think both Ferraris deserve an A-rank spot. I thought they both drove that pretty much immaculately in the end, especially given they had a rough time of it in qualifying. Am I crazy, chat? You tell me, Alice, what do you reckon?
I was going to say, it's a close one, actually. It's a close one because I think they definitely deserve to be... They're both on the same tier, whichever one you put, because they were so close. I think the only thing, obviously, that maybe lets Leclerc down is, even though Ferrari kind of didn't make it easier for him in qualifying, I did see some data where, Carlos Sainz was kind of on a similar strategy in quali, and he did get into Q3. So again, although the team didn't help Leclerc, he did have a chance to get into Q3 and didn't. So that just pulls him down a little bit. They got stuck, they got stuck early on in kind of a DRS train, but fair play to them. Listen, Ferrari are usually the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to absolute howlers and bad strategy calls. And even when they kept their drivers out, I thought, I mean, the tie wear seems, quite high here. Is this really the right call? Do you really have that pace in hand?
Right.
But listen, hats off to Ferrari. As much as we clown them when they get it wrong, and rightly so, you've got to give them props when they get it right. And they did. And the drivers made it work. Sainz a little bit was, Leclerc speed up. I got a little bit more pace, but
I did see that, yeah.
Classic. So,
classic.
Yeah, I think they were both on the same. I'll give them A. I think is it the maximum that the car had this weekend? Probably. Maybe the Mercedes was just a little bit too far ahead. I think the fact that, I mean, we're gonna talk about George a little bit later, but the fact that he made the mistake perhaps makes them look a little bit better, because I don't think they would have been be able to overtake George if he kind of had a clean race. So Yeah, I'm just gonna I'll let them both be an A. I think it was kind of the maximum, but I
Mm,
think they need to start stringing together from qualifying to the race just a little bit more. They've got the brand new upgrades that they put on in Barcelona. That might take a few races to kind of really
mm.
upgrades. Unlike what we've seen with Williams, usually upgrades are not just you bolt them on and bang. From the very first race, everything's working. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 races to find the right setup for that kind of new configuration. So yeah, they're still kind of trying to find that balance. And I think it was a decent kind of Canadian Grand Prix, or certainly a decent recovery after, I'm sure, a disappointing qualifying. So yeah, I think both drivers in A tier is fair enough.
I think so too. The chat seems to be agreed. Has agreed. Very good save for Ferrari after how their weekend went. Plus an honorary spot for Le Mans winner Giovinazzi. I love that they called him reserve driver at first. When they first showed Gio on the pit wall, and then it was like, oh no, that guy that won Le Mans last week, yeah, him. Yeah. So I thought that was quite funny.
But the thing is, they flicked. I think that was on Friday. They just called him Ferrari reserve driver, and then by Saturday, they must have seen the stuff online
Right.
because then they were flicking backwards and forwards between like his like subheading where it was like Le Mans winner and reserve driver. So that was brilliant.
There you go. It's like clearly somebody had a word with the boys at Biggin Hill upstairs and went, yeah, there you go. Yeah, boys and girls up there at Biggin Hill. So yeah, absolutely agreed on that one. No, Dre, you're not great, says Tawonga. Sai says, to be honest, I think maybe I prefer Leclerc's more safe approach than Carlos with the blocking error, but both A. Woody says, agree with A for Ferrari, and to think they had terrible tyre management until now this season. So asks, do you think the Ferrari car is getting better? I'd give it a couple more rounds because Spain was not good. Spain was dreadful for them. So I guess it swings and roundabouts. Get back to me in a couple of rounds' time because let's not forget Charles Leclerc won at Austria next. Like Leclerc won there last year, and that's the next race we're going to in 2 weeks' time. So keep your eyes out for that. If they're good in Austria again, I'll back you up and I'll say, hey, maybe Ferrari's got something with these upgrades. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think that's about as good a day as Ferrari could have reasonably hoped for. Let's. You know what? Oh, let's you pick a name. Who do you want to talk about that we haven't mentioned so far?
I mean, let's talk about George Russell. Let's talk about George Russell.
George Russell. Now,
Howler.
he was going all right. He was running fourth. He was in that fight for second with Alonso and Hamilton. And then he clatters the outside wall at the second, big chicane complex. Puts him to the back of the field. They were able to, not so much fix the damage, but was able to continue with a new tire after getting a puncture. But eventually, I think it was the brake that was was failing towards the end, so they had to retire the car. How do you feel about this grade wise? Is this a D rank by default for driver error that puts him out of race?
Yeah, this is definitely the worst one. This is a D by default because listen, I'm a George Russell fan. I think he was doing a really good job actually. I think Fernando was struggling a little bit because there was a bit of pressure early on from George. So he was trying to overtake Lewis, but George was keeping him honest in terms of that DRS. And
yeah, absolutely.
Listen, this is the top level of elite motorsport. You're in Mercedes. You're in a team that's fighting for maybe not race wins at the moment, but for podiums. And ultimately, he cracked. He made a mistake. He bottled it, whatever you want to call it. It was just a bad race, and he knows it was a bad race. You could see once he got out of the car, he went and apologized over the radio. He went and apologized to the pit wall because, he's gonna have to take this one on the chin. It was a bad race, and whatever the issues were later on, I mean, he was scrapping with Alex Albon. He wasn't able to overtake Alex, so in the end, he probably would have finished 8th. And whichever way you cut it, that is a bad result, especially when your teammate is then finishing in 3rd. But listen, George has been, he was fantastic last year in 2022. A little bit unlucky at parts, during this season, but I think he's still doing a good job. But we are seeing that. And it's those fine lines, isn't it? We're talking about great drivers, and Russell is a great driver. But when you compare him to an Alonso and Hamilton, it's the fine lines that just are costing him. But listen, he's been doing a great job. He is the reason why Mercedes are above Aston Martin. I think in the constructors, their driver lineup is making the difference. So I don't want to knock the guy too much, but this was just a bad race overall, and it's just about moving on to the next one. Just forget about this one. You made the mistake, whatever, learn from it, move on to the next one. You got a good car, so yeah. But he's going to take this one on the chin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned it last year. Russell was every bit as good as Hamilton was in 2022. They were very evenly matched. And I know Hamilton gave up a lot of his setup time at the first half of the year to try and fix the porpoising, but at worst, you could say that Russell kept Hamilton honest. He's been a little bit on the unluckier side of things this year. I know that Australia engine blowout didn't do him any favors on the scoreboard either. This was probably his weakest weekend as a Mercedes driver so far. It's a shame because, like I said, he was running again right behind Hamilton and Alonso when he was running well. And yeah, it's like you say, it's a very fine margin game. Generally speaking, since I've had the tier list, if you have a driver error and you put yourself out of the race effectively, you kind of got to go in D for me. And yeah, it's kind of it's just one of those weekends. Like you said, Russell will take it on the chin. He's very, very good, and there is no doubt I think he'll bounce back just fine. I want to put another man in D, and see if you disagree with me here. Nyck de Vries.
Knew it.
Nick, what are we doing? I'm trying. I'm trying with Nick. I really am, and he's looked a bit better in the last couple of weekends. But what was that wheel-to-wheel fight with Kevin Magnussen about?
I think it obviously started in the first corner when he tried to, I think, go around the outside. I think K-Mag almost gave him the little slap and just kind of put him off into the grass. And I think what happened there was just frustration. It was just pure frustration. I saw someone tweet, Peter Brooks, another YouTuber, obviously because George Russell managed to kind of undercut both of them and get two in one there.
Yeah,
and I think he tweeted, "Through goes Russell," as if like that was the "through goes Hamilton" equivalent. That was like, that was the low version, however, overtaking those two.
That was the "through goes Hamilton" at home. That's what
exactly.
that was.
Exactly. It was the "Mom, I want through goes Hamilton," and then that's what you get at home.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love that. And I think he was carrying that, being overtaken by George, being kind of put onto the grass a little bit. I think he was carrying that that kind of frustration. And then when they got to that kind of corner where, that kind of right left, he was on the inside, the dirty part. There's absolutely no grip there whatsoever. No one has even driven there all weekend because it's so tight to the apex, and he just misjudged it. He totally misjudged it, locked up, went off, took K-Mag with him. And I mean, I tweet this and I actually want to know, what people think in the chat in terms of he locked, K-Mag did nothing wrong there. Yes, Nick was kind of down the inside, so maybe he deserved space, but he basically took, K-Mag off the track with him. And
yeah,
I don't want to see loads of penalties in Formula One. I don't think it should be kind of over, penalized every single, there are racing incidents. But was this one of those occasions where, regardless of what position he's in, should it have been a penalty? Because it almost reminded me a little bit of the Hamilton Verstappen incident in Sao Paulo in 2021, where Max just kind of misjudged it, and obviously took Lewis off with him. Lewis had to take avoidant action. And even in that scenario, it was like, that doesn't seem right. And again, it's just something I want to ask, is it just a racing incident, or should, Nick have got a penalty anyway, just to lay down a marker? Because it was his mistake that made K-Mag go off the track.
Yeah, I think, my personal opinion, I think the stewards left it alone because both guys were in their own races. They thought, well, we'll just call this a wash. It's easy, you're both at the back of the field, and you're basically a lap down now anyway. Your race is effectively done. And when those sorts of incidents happen, I think the stewards generally just say, well, we're just gonna wipe our hands of this one. It solved itself. But I do generally agree. I think Nyck de Vries ran K-Mag into a position where K-Mag probably should have backed out of it at a certain point, but he's in that position in the first place because de Vries was probably not going to make the corner. And, K-Mag's got nowhere to go at that point. It's either take the escape road or stick your foot in there and hope that someone backs out of it. And I don't like those sort of yield or crash scenarios. Like you say, I was thinking a different Verstappen-Hamilton incident. I was thinking more Monza 2021, where I think Hamilton was a bit naughty to pinch that apex at turn 2, but I also think Max backing out of it was what sealed the deal and caused the accident. So I think given the context, a racing incident is fine. If somebody put a gun to my head, I would say you're probably giving Nyck de Vries a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision, in my opinion. But I think because their race was effectively ended by it, the stewards were just like, well, yeah, just let that go. Yeah, so for me, that's for me. That's de Vries in the D tier. I don't know about De Vries, man. I'm unsure about him. I really am. If he's F1 standard, I'm trying. Like I know the chat are not they're not kind, saying Jason saying yeah, K-Mag had nowhere to go. Andrew Bannister saying no idea how De Vries wasn't given a penalty. Crusader Larry, waste of money, doesn't deserve his seat. Woody saying think De Vries is just struggling with a bad car, bad situation to start the rookie season. That is probably a factor as well. AlphaTauri are not a very.
I was
going
to say it's the problem with Nick is that I mean we're going to talk about Logan Sargent who retired earlier, maybe a little bit later, but Logan is another one who's struggling with a bad car. Whatever Alex Albon did in this race, Logan doesn't have the upgrades, and so he's also been struggling in his rookie season with a bad car. But Logan Sargent and Nick De Vries are two very different drivers. Nick is 27 years old. It's always the context with Nick. I know that he's struggling with a bad car. I mean, AlphaTauri are literally last in the constructors, so it's a bad car. But it's mistakes like that as well. I think again it was frustration, and you'd understand it with a younger driver who's maybe impatient, just pushing a bit too much, maybe doesn't quite, just wants it a little bit too much at the time. But he's an experienced driver. He knows that he should have backed out on that kind of compromised inside line, and he didn't. That was the sort of a mistake that I'd expect of a younger driver who's still learning his trade. And he's definitely he stopped crashing like he was at the beginning of the season, but he's making kind of steps a little bit, but it's not the steps that he should be making, and I think it might come a little bit too late, to be honest, especially when you look at some of the other Red Bull juniors, Lawson and Wasser, who are really doing a good job, and they're the ones putting the pressure on him to, to potentially be in Formula One for next year. So, yeah, I don't know how many more races. I think he's got about 6 or 7 races to save his seat, to be honest. I mean, he's now kind of on, fraud watch at this point. He really is. So
yeah, I'd say, I mean, it's Helmut Marko. He's never been afraid to make a ballsy call when it comes to swapping drivers out. Owassa's probably won't be Owassa because he's competing for the Formula 2 championship right now, but Liam Lawson is over there in what I like to call finishing school over there at Super Formula and is driving very well over there. They've got 2 prime contenders for De Vries' seat next year if they want to pull the trigger on that. So De Vries absolutely under pressure going for the rest of the season. You mentioned Logan Sargent. Let's get him out of the way quickly. I've got him in C. I know it was poor in qualifying. I mean, it's hard to evaluate because obviously his race ended after, what was it, like 8 laps. It seems like it was a power unit failure of some kind. Should we just call him a C and move on? Should we just call that a wash and just say, hey, not much you can do in that race with that situation. Also, I love the fact that Crusader Larry in the chat is insisting, quote, give me Lawson in capital letters. I love that. Am I being too generous to just call it a wash and give Sargent a C? Because there wasn't much evidence of his actual race, was it?
I was going to say, I mean, you're asking me to judge him based off, I think, qualifying in P19. Qualified P19 and then he had 7 laps in the race. So, yeah, I think it might be too harsh to say that he's in D. I suppose he wasn't last at the time when he retired. I don't know what the problem was, by the way. It seemed very, I don't know about anyone else, but like when the engineer came on and said, stop the car immediately, pull it over, like now, find the nearest. No argument, no debate or anything. Just no. So yeah, I wonder what the problem, like why it was that bad. But yeah, I think put him in C because it's weird that there's not really much to judge. He wasn't that great in qualifying, and again now it's kind of difficult to also compare him to Alex because not only is Alex a better driver, but this weekend they had kind of very different cars as well. So I think C is just about right because how am I supposed to judge him after 7 laps in a bad qualifying? So yeah.
Exactly. Right, before we get into the second half of the board, it's time for a quick MoneyGram send of the day for best overtake. Now, I'm going to put this to the guest. Aldas, this is on you. What was your favourite overtake at this race? What was your MoneyGram send of the day?
Oh my God, it's one of the 2 Lando moves for sure. I agree. It was either the one on his teammate or the one on Bottas, I think. And do you know what? I think I'm going to go with the one on his teammate because when I saw the replay, he came from a long way. That was a different postcode that Lando came from. So it was a big send. And especially on your teammate, you got to make sure you get that right because you could end up taking both of them out, especially when they were battling for the points. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Lando for sure. And it was that move on Oscar Piastri, a really good move into the chicane. He could have just waited until the back straight, or potentially I think Oscar also had the DRS. So actually, I think he kind of did have to go for it there and then.
Yeah.
And boy, did he. So yeah, it's got to go to Lando. Incredible. Unlucky not to score points again. We're going to get onto him, but yeah, he's got the move of the day, no doubt.
Indeed, I was going to go for the other one. Funnily enough, I was going to go for the Bottas move at the hairpin, given that's not a DRS overtake, and he just sent it down the inside and made it work. I thought that was a quality pass from Lando. Man had to work very, very hard on this Grand Prix, and I was a particularly big fan of that clutch late move down at the hairpin. So, but I will give it to the guest. So I will say that his move on Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris gets the MoneyGram send of the day for his overtake on teammate Oscar Piastri. Right, back to the tier list. Shall we talk McLaren while we're here? Lando Norris is an interesting case. I want to say A. A part of me wants to say A, because I think McLaren is still midfield. I know he got hit with a 5-second time penalty for unsportsmanlike behaviour. I think he was backing the queue up earlier on in the race, which I'm actually startled that was a penalty, to be honest with you. Again, I wasn't sure that's even worth a penalty. I think that was a questionable one. I gave Yuki the benefit of the doubt for Spain a couple of weeks ago. Because I thought that was a harsh penalty, to be honest. I love that he accused Joe of flopping. I think that's such a basketball thing to say. I thought that was really funny. But I think even with that, because I think Norris deserved to be in the points, and he would have been in the points if it wasn't for that penalty. I want to say A for Norris, and I kind of want to say the similar for Piastri in 11th. Maybe B for Piastri. What do you reckon, Alice? Is it A or B for the McLarens? You chat. You talk amongst yourselves as well.
The thing is, it was unavoidable. That what he did technically was a mistake, because
Yes.
I think Lewis also actually got, this was years ago, I think 2017 actually, maybe even, I might have got that wrong, but I think Lewis also got a similar penalty for backing, I think it was Daniel Ricciardo up in the pits when Bottas was ahead of him pitting, and Lewis also got a 5-second penalty. So it was, I think it was kind of a fair penalty. It was a fair cop, I suppose, because you're not allowed to do that. Under a safety car, he was, that is technically kind of sort of dangerous driving. So, and that kind of has to go. He was amazing. He had so much pace. Both him and Oscar, I thought were pretty close, but that was a mistake. So I'm actually going to say B. I think he had all of the pace. Did he really need to? Did he really need to do that? Was it that critical at the time to kind of back the pack up and take that risk? It was just because he made the mistake at the end of the day, and that has to, when we kind of criticize, George a little bit for making a mistake and crashing into the barrier, it's a different kind of mistake, and ultimately, it kind of didn't cost as much, but I mean, it did cost him the points in the end. I think he pulled off some really great moves. Even that last lap overtake on Ocon, that was incredible. You couldn't take your eyes off Lando right up until the final corner. But I'm gonna say B. You've got to not be able to make mistakes in those kind of clutch situations. He kind of had the car underneath him to kind of score points. I thought him and Oscar were actually pretty close. I mean, I think at the beginning of the race, it was Oscar that was ahead. Lando managed to pull off the move, legitimately. But yeah, he did make that mistake, and that's on him. I think it'll be a learning lesson perhaps, and McLaren will feel a little bit hard done by, but them's the rules, I suppose, even if it's a bit harsh.
Jason says B, bit clumsy. Cyrugara says B. Andrew says A for Lando, B for Oscar. I'm going to go with the crowd on this one. I've put both McLarens in B. I think that's fair enough. And I did see that as well. Like, what do you say there? Stroll on the line for send of the day. That was a good shout as well. Lance Stroll did beat Valtteri Bottas over the line by 0.03 of a second off the final corner. So that was a fun one as well. Great shout there, Woody. But yeah, I'm going to say both McLarens in B. I think that's fair enough. Lance Stroll. I think he got away with one here. Now,
did he though?
I mean, I've initially placed him in C because Stroll, I think, is the reason why Mercedes are going to end up second in the championship this year. Stroll is dragging this team down the line, and this was just another poor weekend from Lance, given the equipment that he's in. 9th place when your teammate is a clear second. to me is I don't think that's good enough. I know it's hard to talk about Lance in a position of jeopardy because of his background and obviously his team, his dad's stake in the team, but Stroll I just think was sloppy all weekend, and then not enough outright pace in race trim. I've got him at C. Am I being convinced out of this or being talked out of this? Am I in the right spot here? Please tell me.
I think he's definitely no higher than a C. But listen, I'm looking at the standings right now. For number one, he's closer to Esteban Ocon than he is to Charles Leclerc, who's the next car up.
Right.
Esteban Ocon is 8 points behind Lance Stroll, and that's crazy. This is the same car. This is the same car that Fernando Alonso is currently 9 points behind the Red Bull in third place. So, I mean, it was not a great qualifying. He didn't, he obviously had that kind of half spin or got away with it, but obviously clipped his front wing as well in qualifying. And then the race was Stroll is secretly a third Mercedes driver. That's
See that, Jason? Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's very good.
That was brilliant. I don't think he's on. I mean, it wasn't like a really bad race. I wouldn't put him with the Russell and De Vries, but no higher. He's a D plus. He's a C minus D plus, whichever way you want to look at it. It wasn't a great race by him. It wasn't a great qualifying. And again, he's driving the second best car on the grid. And this is something I've talked about on my channel. Lance is a good driver. You put him in an Alpine or a McLaren, that kind of midfield car, he will do a solid job, but he is not good enough to be playing with the big boys. I mean, is he still rehabilitating perhaps from, breaking both of his wrists? Maybe, I'm not taking that off the table, but you've got to perform. This is top tier sport. You've got to perform right here, right now. And he's not just underperforming. He's not even in the same league as the drivers around. He's not even in the same league that around the drivers that should be around him. The likes of Leclerc, Sainz, and Alonso. He's a step behind that. And he didn't have a great race. So I'm going to go C just. Yeah.
I agree. The chat largely agrees. Andrew saying, yeah, I think he had a better race than Perez, but that says absolutely nothing. Yeah, C. You could say that. Says C is good. I think we'll take that C. Checo.
I mean, almost in a weird way, almost rinse repeat what I said for Lance Stroll.
Pretty much.
Bad qualifying. It was down to him again. He had the laps. He's on out in Q2 or not making Q3 for 3 races in a row in that Red Bull. That is crazy.
Half the season in total. We've had 8 races. He's not made Q3 4 times out of 8.
In terms of judging kind of Checo on this race alone, it was definitely a C, nothing higher than that.
I agree.
He kind of I was about to say he kind of did the best that he could, but it wasn't good enough. I mean, I think he should have been closer to the Ferraris. He should have been overtaking them, because I think he started kind of near Charles Leclerc as well. So I think he went on the soft tire quite late on, if I remember, or something like that. Checo went right at the end, so he got fastest lap attempt. And to be honest, I actually think that's kind of embarrassing. When you've got nothing to lose, when you finish in P6 did he finish in the end?
Yeah.
And you've got nothing to lose, that you have to go for the fastest lap. I think that says everything you need to know about his race. And when you see his teammate, I think Max won like 4 in a row now.
Yes,
it's kind of crazy. So it was another bad weekend by Checo. I suppose at the end, the weird thing about Checo though is that he's still doing what Red Bull kind of need him to be doing, because he's not backing Max up, but because they're so dominant, they're in a much better situation than they were, say, 3-4 years ago, where they had that kind of revolving door of drivers. But he's looking comfortable because there is no title fight at the moment. He's still, second in the championship, doing everything he kind of needs to be doing for Red Bull. But this has been a bad stretch of races by him, no doubt about it. Starting, I think, in Miami, starting on pole, not able to convert it with Max miles back. And it's been a bit of he really needs to Austria is a big race. He needs to bounce back very soon.
Massively. I completely agree with everything Aldas has just said there. Back in the chat, Checo was there.
He turned up, maybe.
Yeah, he turned up. He's 69 points behind his teammate now. And he was 6 points behind Max after he won in Baku. So in the last 4 rounds, he's lost 63 points to Max Verstappen. We've gone from potential title run if everything goes to plan, to the other end of the scale where we're now talking about his job security again in the space of 4 rounds. It swings.
We're talking about him being beaten by an Aston Martin with a Fernando Alonso in it.
Right. That's just not good enough. Don't get me wrong. It solves the whole, are we going to have a title fight headache for Red Bull, but it's giving them another problem. You probably want your second car to be doing better than this. So again, it's very swings and roundabouts to me at this point, and it's a problem. It could be a growing problem for Red Bull. Checo needs to step up big time, and yeah, hopefully soon. Let's get the Hasses out of the way, shall we? I want to give Hulkenberg a B, purely because of how well-timed this qualifying run was. Yes, he got a free-place grid penalty for not slowing down enough after crossing the line when the red flag came out. And I want to give Magnussen a C. Is that fair? I think Hulkenberg deserves some partial credit for the qualifying run that he put together to stick it. I mean, that is the highest the Haas has ever started a Grand Prix until the penalty.
K-Mag.
Yeah. Because K-Mag, started a Grand Prix. I had to be very clever with the English there because technically, yes, it was a pole position.
The sprint.
I call it the stats keeper's nightmare is the sprint. Yes, that's how I've got it. I've got Hulk second and K-Mag third. I should say Hulk in B and then K-Mag in C. Is that fair?
Do you know, I'm actually, do you know, I think you're spot on, actually. I agree with that because I do think it's fair to put Hulk in B. I think he was having a really good race right at the beginning because he got done by that safety car. I think he pitted literally.
Massively.
He pitted, I think, on lap. Yeah, he pitted literally the lap before. So he got completely done by the safety car. And the Haas is, I think I've kind of sort of sussed out what kind of car the Haas is. Like over one lap, it's a pretty decent car. Like, especially with Hulkenberg, he's been very good in qualifying. But the thing has, whether it's down to Nico Hulkenberg or Kevin Magnussen or the car or the combination of the three in whatever order, it is not good on its tires. It is seriously their only chance. It's almost like the Williams in terms of they've got to pull some kind of, hat out of the bag, something with a strategy to get ahead of all of the cars and then just defend for their life. It doesn't seem like they're not like a McLaren or an Alpine where they can attack other cars in front of them and genuinely overtake them. So yeah, I think Nico got a bit unlucky. I think he had a good weekend overall, solid pace. So I think B is about right. He did get done over, no mistakes. So I really wish the race played out a little bit differently for Nico because I would have loved to have seen, would he have kind of stayed in that Albon, Ocon, McLaren battle with Bottas as well? Would have he been a beneficiary of that 5-second penalty that Lando received? So yeah, I think it was. I think the team did nothing wrong. Obviously, you never know when a safety car is going to come out like that. But yeah, I think they got unlucky. But I think Nico overall had a really good kind of race and also weekend in general. Just got a bit unlucky.
Yeah, I think that's entirely all fair. I think Hulkenberg was the biggest victim of that early safety car for Logan Sargent and whatnot. So yeah, just really, really unfortunate situation for Hulkenberg, who again had a brilliant weekend up to that point, was running top 6 potentially. I don't think they would have held out in the end because Haas still struggle with their tyres, and I think that's the biggest problem with them as a team. The race pace just isn't there. It's a fast car. It's certainly fast over a lap. They've just got to figure out a way of making sure their tyres don't chew themselves to bits. We've got 5 drivers left. I'm going to go a little rapid fire here because we've already got 47 minutes. This is the longest wrap-up we've done, but I don't care because I like it. I'll try and keep it to under an hour. Thanks everyone that stuck around, but more of you have actually tuned in since we started, so thank you for... Thanks everyone.
We've got to keep going, mate. We've got to keep going at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, by midnight we'll have 3,000 people in here, of course. Yuki was, I think, is just kind of there this time round. I don't think AlphaTauri had a very competitive car at all this weekend. I want to say C for Yuki.
I think, definitely C. Something happened to him at the beginning of the race because he pitted, I think, either on the opening lap or something like that. So something happened to him on the opening lap and he pitted straight for the hards. And then it almost looked like he was a bit of he actually benefited from the safety car because he already pitted. He kind of had free air. And so jumped Hulkenberg, but yeah, it looked like the car just wasn't at the races. And yeah, Yuki, I think, got a little bit unlucky at the beginning. And it's weird because now, of course, AlphaTauri are last in the constructors. And that is worrying. That's not a good sign whatsoever to finish behind the Williams for them. So yeah, I think Yuki's been driving actually really good, but it wasn't kind of one of his best races. I want to see like a replay or what happened to him on the opening lap because I'm not too sure. But I think C is about right for Yuki, unfortunately.
I think you're right. C is about fine. Where are we putting the Alpines? Now, Ocon was 8th, Gasly 12th. Gasly recovered reasonably well from another bad qualifying. He got eliminated in Q1. To be fair, he was blocked. He was impeded by Carlos Sainz. He got a penalty for that, so he was a little bit unlucky in that instance. I kind of want to say Gasly C, Ocon B. Is that, again, is that fair? I feel like, I think Ocon had another solid weekend, although he was running 5th, I want to say, and then the safety car happened, and I think he lost out a bit badly on that one, but still, 8th is still a decent day.
You know what? I might actually put Ocon in A because
Really?
he was. I know he didn't. Yeah, because I know he didn't obviously overtake Alex towards the end. I mean, the Williams was slippery, so it was, it kind of he was able to make it work. But I think Ocon just had a really solid day. I mean, starting 6th, so great qualifying. That's brilliant for Alpine. Continuing to score points. Yes, I know he didn't overtake Alex, but Alex had the race of his life, but he was there the entire time on his gearbox. So I don't know, and made no mistakes again. Yeah, Ocon got a little bit kind of caught out by the safety car, but managed to make up for it. Just I'm gonna go maybe A actually. I don't know what does the chat feel. Is that controversial?
So says
really
Ocon B, Gasly C. Thought he was worse than Stroll, maybe even D. Whoa, Gasly wasn't that bad. I don't think that's that bad.
What race was he watching?
You say the Larry says B for Ocon, C for Gasly.
I'm not getting a lot of agreement here with my Ocon A.
I'll excuse Gasly for that incredibly unlucky qualifying. Yeah. How do I want to play this? Have I convinced you? Benefit of the doubt. I'll give Ocon an A. I think that Alpine was not stupid good this weekend, and I think that again that was about the maximum. Maybe 7th if he beats Albon, but again it's a poor matchup at Canada to take on Albon in a head-to-head. Ocon gets an A. You know what? I'll lean on the generous side for both because a couple of guys are saying B for Gasly. So, to be fair, I don't know why he was put on the soft tyre to start the Grand Prix. I don't know what Otmar was thinking on that one. Given the tyre wear was worse than expected, I think that was mad. He still came up to 12th. I think B is fine for Gasly. It was a quiet race, but not a dreadful one by any chance. I think B is just fine. The chat has been generous given the qualifying situation, which I think is fair. So yeah, that's fine. That leaves Alpha and Bottas 10th, got a point.
I think that's a really good result, actually. I think for Alfa Romeo, how inconsistent they did bring upgrades in Monaco. So again, like I talked with Ferrari, they've had a few races to kind of adjust to them. I thought it was a really good race by Bottas. Again, he benefited from Lando having that 5-second penalty. I think B at minimum, maybe even A. I mean, it's difficult to get points.
I've been down on Alfa Romeo for most of the season. To get a point in that car is probably A grade standard and he was running like 8th and 9th for most of that race.
Bottas reappeared.
Bottas reappeared inside the chat. Yeah, he's back.
Bottas version 30.9 or something.
Yeah, so I want to say Bottas. I'm gonna say A for Bottas. I think a point in that car is a really good day. I don't think the Alfa Romeo is a competitive car at the moment at all, and I think that is a good result for Bottas. He's always gone well around Canada. Zhou, I've got down as C, 16th on the day. Not entirely his fault. I know he had a very slow pit stop in the middle of that. There was a 7-second stop in there or something like that, which didn't know phase. But Zhou was a bit anonymous this weekend to me. So I want to say
In quali, he had that weird incident where his car broke down, but then he started it again. So
yeah, car died.
Maybe that put him out of the rhythm a little bit. Obviously, he qualified last as well. How much of that was down to kind of the issues that he was having? So yeah, a bit of an off weekend by Zhou, but I think I think both, they're trying their hardest. Zhou had a really good weekend last time out in Barcelona. So
it was excellent.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I mean, I think that was Zhou's best weekend in F1 last time out in Spain. That was a really, really good result for him. Shame he wasn't able to keep that momentum going into this one, but I think still, we'll put that down in the books as maybe just an average weekend for Zhou more than anything else. But that's our tier list. It's all done. So we've got Verstappen, Alonso, Hamilton, Albon in S. Both Ferraris, Ocon and Bottas in A. Both McLarens, Hulkenberg and Gasly in B. Sargent, Stroll, Perez, K-Mag, Sonoda and Zhou in C, and then Russell and Nick DeVries in the D tier zone. I'm pretty happy with that. How do you feel about it, Alice? Any last minute changes before we get out of here?
Honestly, I'm very happy with that. I think it's just Lando that I'm a little bit like I almost, because of his pace and because I almost want to put him in A, but he did make that mistake. So as much as it hurts me, I think it is still B, but that's the only one that I'm kind of like looking. What does chat think? Like looking at the other drivers
was
around
pushing
those
for
tiers.
A. Chat was pushing for A, and I remember because, and I love the argument from I think it was Mika in there who said earlier in there that not that Mika, who said, you know, it was Dido, sorry, that said, hey, like Lando had 3 killer overtakes in this race, so he certainly brought the entertainment. We didn't even mention his outside turn 1 pass on Hulkenberg, which was an absolutely quality pass in its own right. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to swap Norris and Ocon around. I'm going to put Ocon back in B, and I'm going to give Norris the A. I'm giving him bonus points for entertainment value. It's my tier list, ultimately. I will break the rules just a little bit on this one. The chat's leaning, like, say, yeah, the chat saying, yeah, Lando.
They're giving him A.
Yeah, you know what? You win,
I think
chat.
Ocon a bit robbed there, though. I think Ocon is a bit robbed in B. That does not. He did not have. Look, Ocon. How could you put Ocon in the same tier as Gasly? No, Ocon back in A. I'm putting my foot. There's no way he had the same race as his teammate.
You know what? I'll concede. I'll concede that one. I've put 5 guys in A. I've put Ocon back in A with Norris. I think that's fair. I think that's the fairest option with Gasly in B. I'm happy with that. Okay.
There we go.
I will settle for that. But I hope you guys like that tier list. Aldas, before we get out of here, please, I know there's only about 4 people on the internet who don't know who you are at this point, but just in case there is anybody new, tell the good people where they can find you.
You're too kind, man. You're too kind.
Course,
everything, luckily, everything is just under my name, Aldas, ALDAS. I just literally talk about Formula One, break it all down, give my opinion, have my absolute terrible wheel knowledge on display, and I love a good chat about Formula One. So yeah, everything's Aldas on Twitter, Instagram, and obviously YouTube as well. Got some exciting videos actually coming up, breaking down this race as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, please give him a WTF1 bump from us. Aldas is one of the very, very best on YouTube. I've been saying this for a long time. I had this one circled on the calendar because I knew...
I'm going red, mate. I'm going red.
I am sincere on this show. I said it with Brendan Lee when I had him on here as well, because I'm determined to push him because Brendan's the nicest, most disgustingly humble man in the world. And I will double down on that here. Aldas is one of the very best on this platform. They don't get much better on here. Please give him a bump from us if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed to him, please do. Alice is absolutely quality. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time for another WTF1 powered by MoneyGram. WTF1 wrap, I should say, powered by MoneyGram. In a couple of weeks' time after the Austrian Grand Prix. Thanks to everyone who chipped in the chat and watched along with us. I know it's nearly 10:30 UK time, so it's a late one, but I hope you guys very much enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching, and plenty more videos coming on WTF1 real soon. And yeah, I actually made an actual appearance in one, playing the Devon Butler last week on F1 23. So that was an interesting experience, having a very tall, very talented man blow in your ear telling you how bad you are at driving. It was quite the experience, but do check that out if you haven't already. Plenty more coming on WTF1 real soon. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. He's been Aldas. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara. Take care.
Peace. Off to bed now.
Recording stopped.